Hello, friends. Welcome to today's show. I am Dr. Helen, founder and CEO, Chief Engagement Officer, and Encouragement, and all those other E's that are so important, of Dr. Helen Holton and Associates, and your host for Dr. Helen Speaks, Strengths, Resilience, and Leadership. If you're here, we believe it's because you want to add to your knowledge and power as a leader, to increase your intellect, what you know, and invest in your leadership, taking action to move closer to your next level in life and leadership. I've learned along this leadership journey that the most effective leaders are lifelong learners. Your investment in you makes you a better leader, a more relevant leader, the kind of leader the world needs more of today. So thank you for doing you. 3 things we know for sure are: 1, when you learn to leverage your strengths, the best of who you are, it makes a difference. When you navigate weaknesses, and we all have them, and to build your resilience. When you incorporate these 3 treasures, tested, tried, and true, into your leadership growth and development, they'll empower you to stay steady during your storms so you can sail smoothly on the seas of success with ripples and not ruptures. Important. I didn't say it was all going to be silky smooth, but you'd much rather have a few ripples than massive ruptures. It doesn't mean you won't have moments of feeling stagnant and stuck. That's where your resilience comes in. Resilience is a powerful practice that helps you persevere and push through your disruptions, distractions, and detours that work to derail your success. Let me ask you, what's standing in the way between you and your next best success? Of all the places you could have chosen to spend time right now, we're glad you're here with us. You add value to our time together. Your conversations, comments, and suggestions matter. We take them to heart. When we curate content for the show, it's with you in mind. Reach out and let us know how we're doing. Drop us a note on our website, drhelenholton.com, through the contact tab. Connect with me on LinkedIn as Dr. Helen Holton, and that will help keep me accountable to what I say I'm going to do more of in social media. And follow us on Instagram at Dr. Helen Speaks. We love connecting with you. Do you have the opportunity to do what you do best every day? I ask this powerful question every week because it's something for you to think about every day. It's far too easy to get stuck in a rut and not know it. When you come to our show, we want you to give yourself permission to pause, exhale, and breathe. Allow your mind to let go and be present in this moment, to think deeper, be more intentional, and do something with whatever you take away. Take action. Our goal is to encourage you to engage deeper with yourself than you normally do and focus on what you really want for your life. Repetition is a proven process for retention, and we are your personal reminder of this truth. When you invest in yourself daily, you empower others to be a better leader. Focused, you empower yourself and others to be better leaders, focused on what you do best. Now, before we jump in with our guest today, make sure you've got something handy to jot down your thoughts, ideas, aha moments, questions that click for you. Capture them so you can easily come back to them later. Ask us questions, reflect, expand, and build them into your life. Have you enjoyed the women warriors and waymakers we've had on the show lately? Yes, I'm a little fixated on that, but every time I run into these women that are just so powerful that are doing it, I'm like, oh, I gotta have you on the show because I want you to hear opportunities for you to go deeper into what you do. Who knows? It's somebody out there right now that letting me know your story, what you've done. I may say, gotta have you on the show. We've had some insightful, powerful conversations, and I am super excited about our guest today. She's a warrior and a waymaker. She may not think so, but I know so, which is why I brought her to the show today. To care for those who once cared for us is one of the highest honors. I got this quote from a young woman, Tia Walker, who was thrust into the role of caregiver at an early age. And these were words that she shared. But I'm delighted today to introduce you to our guest, Ms. Donita Brown, a woman I've known for decades. Yeah, I can honestly say that. She's a friend, a mentee, and just a beautiful woman inside and out. Thrust into caregiving unexpectedly. And what I love about her, as she took it on, knowing very little about what it really meant, she has become a champion warrior and waymaker, stepping into new territory. What makes her so extraordinary is that she went all in to learn, grow, and build her own resilience by creating a community of support. She's the founder and CEO of Hey Caregiver and the Binti Circle. Donita, I am so delighted to have you here today. What would you like to share with our audience before we jump in?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. First, I'd like to say that the first two people that logged on were men. So it's good to see men. I recently hosted a panel with men, male caregivers, and men are caregivers too. Lots of times, and like you mentioned, I was thrusted into caring for my mother. But lots of time, especially in our community as Black people, we just do what we have to do. We don't identify as caregivers. My grandmother was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer in 2004, February of 2004. I stepped in, took care of her, but I didn't identify as a caregiver. In 2014, my dad was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. I flew out to LA, took care of him off and on for 6 months. I still did not identify as a caregiver. And then in 2018, my mother had a brainstem stroke. I was serving in the Peace Corps in Eswatini, Africa. It's the smallest country on the continent. And I was loving it. I was at the end of my service. It was at that point, it was 27 months that I had spent in Eswatini. And I was planning my end of service trip. I was planning my 2-week stay in Ghana. I was going to Egypt for a week. I was going to Senegal for a week. And, I was so excited about that. And a phone call was August 5th, 2018. And I'll never forget that date. As I was, planning my trip, I realized, I was like, okay, let me call my dad. Because like I said, he lives in LA. So I said, this is a good time to call him because it was a 10-hour time difference. So I called him and I heard him speaking to someone on the phone. And he said, this is her now. I asked him, I said, well, who are you talking to? He said, I'm talking to your Aunt Jean. I said, well, I'm thinking like, none of us have birthdays in August. Why are you talking to Aunt Jean in August? So I heard him, like I say, tell my aunt, this is her now. And my aunt said, tell her that Joan is on life support. Joan is my mother. I was over 8,275 miles away. And I just lost it. I just lost it because here I am serving in Africa. It was definitely a divine mission. I had taken a pseudo leave. I would say pseudo sabbatical because I wasn't getting paid, but they were holding my job for me at CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So I had a 3-year sabbatical, and my life was kind of had changed in terms of what I wanted to do internationally as a federal employee. I would have been able to lateral over into a international position and all that. So I'm thinking, this is my mind, right? This is the life that I was planning for myself. Okay, I was at a decent, if you're familiar with the federal GS scale, I was kind of up there, making a 6-figure salary. I was like, oh, if I come overseas, then my money could be my money. I can pay off my student loan. I can pay off my mortgage. I can save. And this is what it all sounded good to me. Then my mother had this brainstem stroke the next day, which was August 6th, 2018. I was on a flight home to Baltimore. I landed in at BWI Airport on August 7th. My cousin picked me up. And once I was in Baltimore and my stepped foot on US ground, like solid home, my caregiving life began. So the thing with caregiving and any other type of life-changing event, you can't control. And so, like I said, when I previously cared for my grandfather, I'm sorry, my grandmother and my father, it was not like it was for my mom. One, it was sudden. My life, the trajectory of my life changed significantly. I was navigating being home, the readjustment of being home, because before I left, I got rid of everything. I didn't have a bed. I didn't have anywhere, to sleep, and just trying to figure everything out. It was just like, whoa. Then I'm dealing with the healthcare system, right? So she was at Johns Hopkins Bayview in neurocritical care. She had a mitral valve replacement in 2005. So she was on Coumadin, also known as warfarin. But because she had the stroke, they had to take her off of Coumadin for the risk of bleed, right?
Well, which is a blood thinner, just so people
it's a
don't
blood
know.
thinner for those, right? So they had to take her off of that so that it would not increase the risk for more bleeding. But they're still trying to figure things out. I see my mom, she's intubated, which means she has a breathing tube. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to talk to, where to go. So along with the healthcare system, it was figuring out the finances. She paid her main bills from her account with the credit union. And while I was a beneficiary on that account, I wasn't co-owner. So I'm trying to, get her bills paid. Then I have to figure out guardianship, which is a whole nother thing. You go to the courthouse. You have to you're assigning she's assigning an attorney. You have to get an attorney. It's just all of the things. So all of this is all happening in real time. My mind is still not quite here. You know what I mean? Like, I'm here, but I'm not knowing what to do. I'm in a fog, and I just started figuring things out as I went along, like having to deal with the social worker, dealing with Medicare and the appeal system, and when they just want to discharge. And so it's just a whole lot. So she was intubated for 9 days. The director of critical care, said to us, once we remove the tube and if she's not breathing on her own, do you want to resuscitate her and all that? So, it's all of the questions that you need to answer that we're typically not prepared for. So we think about now I learned about advanced directives. I learned about the MOST form, which is, your life-sustaining treatment in Maryland. What do you want? We didn't have those things in place. And so now not only am I dealing with her care, but it's like, what are her wishes? I have to make decisions for her, but they may not be what she wants. So with caregiving, it's from the beginning to the end. Even with end of life, we encountered that 2 years later. Well, actually a year later, in January 2019, after being in the nursing home for short-term rehab, which that's another conversation. You're going to have to bring me back because we can't talk about everything. But I will say this, when she was in the nursing home, they don't get the level of care that is required. And that's across the board, because I moved into the nursing home. Literally, I stayed there for an entire month before I got to know who was, on shift or whatever. And so even with that, knowing what your loved one wants. And so in the nursing home, she had gotten an infection because she was on a feeding tube, and she had what's called pneumatosis of the intestines. Mm-hmm. And so we rushed her to, from the nursing home, went to Union Memorial. Long story short, they had given her 2 days to live. they said that if we don't do a surgery on her stomach, she's going to die. So I was like, she's already, so at that time she was discharged, but she's immobile. So in terms of like the outcome of the brainstem stroke, while the neurosurgeon had told us that she wasn't going to be able to do much of anything and that her baseline was pretty much what it was, which means that she, from cognitively, she wasn't doing much. Physically, she wasn't doing anything. She had aphasia. So she couldn't really, her voice was very faint. She couldn't articulate her words, any of that. So all of these were at that was kind of baseline. But he told us also that because it was a brainstem stroke, that wasn't the initial diagnosis. They were just like, she had a stroke. But because her left side was still, her left side was weak.
Okay.
Her left side was weak, but the stroke was on the left side. Then he determined, it's the brainstem stroke. So it's kind of in the center, but it affected the left side. And so he said, folks with brainstem strokes pretty much are just locked in. They don't do much. So that was kind of like where she was before she was discharged to short-term rehab. After they tried to discharge her, like say, they told me I was out looking for a bed. Remember, I said I didn't have a bed. I was out shopping for a bed. I received a call from the nursing home, from the hospital saying, we're going to discharge your mom to future care in Charles Village or somewhere. I was like, absolutely not. So I appealed that. So they didn't discharge her. But it's just so much. But again, having the papers, everything that we need in place, being proactive about it. And like, I applaud you for being proactive about the inevitable. You are going to be a caregiver at some point or receive care at some point. And so, it's just something that we had to do. And let me just go back to the story. I know because it was so much that happened, but I told them to treat her with medication, which they did, and she survived. And because she was so, as what they would say, she was accepted into inpatient hospice, right? Mm-hmm. So that means that her prognosis was not, long at all when they accept you into inpatient hospice. Mm-hmm. And so she,
in other words, they had pretty much given up and said, okay, we'll let her stay.
2 days.
Because
2 days.
we see the end in near.
It's 2 days. This was January 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So I came home August 7th. I got home. Now we're in January 2019, and I'm still dealing with all of this. And can you imagine? I had not had time to just stop and be for me. So in 2019, she survived, and she's surviving and living today. She's thriving today. And so I attribute that to care and care and love. Because it's almost like a baby to human touch, when they say when you have babies in the NICU that, you hold them. Mm-hmm. And so it's the same, the skin to skin touch. I kiss on her all the time. I hug her, even though she drives me crazy. She was just yelling, but I'm grateful to be able to do this. And I think that as part, like I said, my service and the Peace Corps mid-career, I was in my 40s when I did it, was divine. But then to come home, this was divine. But I think it was a setup. It was a setup by God, because if I was working, on the level that I was working prior to serving in the Peace Corps, I wouldn't be able to just give up everything like that to care for her, because the more the more money you have, the more money you spend, right? I had 2 luxury vehicles, I had clothes and all of these things. But once I served in the Peace Corps, I gave everything up. So my mind, my mentality had shifted. What mattered most had changed. It was a very relaxed in Swaziland. It was like, it wasn't rush. It wasn't a rat race. And so I enjoyed that. And so when I came home, I was like, I don't want to go back to that, so like I said, already in my mind, I was planning on being an expat, but God had other plans. So
let me ask you this. I love what you're saying. And here we always talk about resilience, because resilience, I call it the secret sauce that many people don't spend the time to invest in consciously, though it's present when you're faced with the unexpected. It's one of those things. You have a decision point. You can say, oh no, I'm gonna deal with this. Or you can just check out and say, I can't handle this. How does resilience play a part in the role you have now and the transition to it?
Well, I think initially when I came home, to be honest, I was just kind of grasping for straws and I really neglected myself. It became all about my mother, her needs, navigating again, like the healthcare system, figuring things out from a financial perspective, that I totally lost myself in that. In learning, I became a certified caregiving consultant because I knew that my story was for somebody else, was to help somebody else, was to be there for them. I didn't have the community that I needed. However, when I became certified, I had to do research and I learned that it wasn't even me, right, that felt like I didn't have the community. Statistics show that there aren't enough services and support and resources for Black people and people of color. And
And
so
that would include poor people.
absolutely,
They could be
absolutely.
the
I mean, social
underserved.
economic, yes, the underserved, but I mean specifically like in this space,
Mhm.
we don't, I mean, now that we have social media, there are a lot of people that are presenting themselves, people of color, caregivers of color that are really promoting themselves online. But the statistics show that we don't have enough resources for us. And what I learned through my lived experience, that caregivers, a lot of us suffer in silence, right? We suffer with clinical depression. And this is me, I'm talking about me. It wasn't clinical, but I know I
So
was.
let me just be clear.
Mhm.
I know it's your story and it's you, but be clear. There are many
No,
that
but
are
I'm saying,
sitting and that will
mhm,
be present here and be like, oh my God,
yeah,
yes, I know what she means. I've been
mhm.
there.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like unhealthy eating, like I said, I was in Africa. I'm used to eating fresh fruits. I was ordering cheesesteak, well, not cheesesteak because I don't eat cheesesteak, but cheese fish subs, and fries and all of that. So I think the resilience for me, and this is one of the things that make people resilient, is the community. They say support from people really helps to, really strengthen that resilience. And I think because God used me to create a community that I so desperately needed and didn't have, I feel like that really helps. And then to be able to help other people is kind of, where I am. And it's important. I also learned this philosophy called selfful. And it wasn't specific to caregivers, but I took it, I was like, oh, I like that. Right. So selfful is that sweet spot between selfish and selfless. As caregivers, we feel guilty. And I learned this too through my lived experience. We feel guilty when we take time for ourselves or want to do something and feel like we're being selfish. And on the flip side, when we're selfless, I say we're being reckless. So selfful is that sweet spot in the middle where you take care of yourself to better take care of your loved one. And I feel like that too helps with resilience, taking time to breathe, taking time to just understand what your needs are. Your needs are, right? What are my needs? What's going to make me feel better? Because also, like I say, there are a lot of caregivers that are suffering in silence, and isolation is not good. And we all learned that in COVID.
Well, a
People
couple
that
of
had
things.
never
Yes,
been out. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
did learn that in COVID. We also learned that as people age, that it's good for them to be around other people, because loneliness can lead to depression, that can lead to wanting to give up in life and all that negative spiral. But I want you to talk about, while we still have some time, I want you to talk about the Benti Circle.
Okay, so as I said, I created a community I so desperately needed. Through Hey Caregiver, we have a retail shop where we provide, merchandise for self-care as well. We have a self-care box, but we also have merchandise. So you can, I say, rock your world proudly. Like, this is a conversation starter, and it gives a voice to the 53 million unpaid family caregivers that are out there. You know, I meet people all the time from all walks of life. When I wear this, they're like, oh my gosh, I was a caregiver to my mother, or oh my God, you know, that kind of thing. So one, we have the retail shop. So it's online, e-commerce, heycaregiver.com. And also the Benji Circle was another, this is my baby. This is, again, God birthed this. This was, I had to complete an assignment when I did my certified caregiving consulting. There was an assignment where I had to interview a person of color, or a person, a disabled person, or a person from the LGBTQ community. And there were a few women that I knew were caring for their mothers as well. And so I was like, you know, can you all join a panel discussion with me? We started out with 4 or 5 for the panel discussion. And we've evolved to over 60 women today. Binti means daughter in Swahili, and the circle represents unity, community, love, continuity. And we are that support for one another. We represent a sisterhood. We're like, this is a Black daughterhood. And it initially, like I say, it started off for daughters caring for their mothers, but have since evolved to daughters caring for their parents, because we know that there are women who are taking care of their fathers as well. And, you know, you find women that are taking care of both, as well as trying to manage their family. So we're in that sandwich generation where we're taking care of our kids as well as our parents. So the Benji Circle offers support, resources, fun, laughter, sisterhood, respite. Respite is very important. Like I said, I did a lot of
self-care piece.
self-care, yeah, but a lot of respite, you know, only 4 out of 10 caregivers do respite. And so, and a lot of us, we're not, let's say with middle class, right? We need more resources for those that are in the middle, because there are programs set up through the city and, you know, different states that caregivers get paid to care for their loved ones, but it's income contingent. So if you have Medicaid, then you could get paid for your loved one. They may supply all the supplies that you need, but where you're in that middle, you're paying for everything out of pocket. And so we want to provide resources for our women, no matter what the income is, because
I
we
want to say, and that's wonderful, but I want to jump in and say it's also important to provide advocacy on how to change the status quo of the condition. And this goes in, when you talk about the circle, the wholeness, the oneness, we have not because we ask not. But we must be organized and understand we can't go ask for the whole moon. We've got to be specific about what we do. And I'm going to invite our guest today to hang around for the afterwards that people don't often do. But this is just a rich conversation that I do want us to continue. So don't go anywhere, folks. As we
real quick, yes, to your point.
Go ahead. Let me do this.
Okay.
Stick around for the afterwards. We don't want you to leave. And as we continue to bring forth the voices and stories of women warriors and waymakers to encourage, inspire, and motivate you to start doing, keep doing, or take what you're doing to the next level. We know the struggle is real and you don't have to go it alone. And it's our hope that these stories inspire and motivate you to take on and tackle opportunities masquerading as challenges to overcome. I've got to take a moment and give a shout out to the team behind the steam of Dr. Helen Speaks. They show up to serve you. It may be my face and that of a guest that you see each week. However, it's the team behind me that makes this show possible each and every week. What keeps you moving forward? From here to what's next? Dr. Helen Speaks. Our purpose is to bring you insightful, intriguing, and introspective information for you to think about and develop into lifelong learning, along with personal and professional growth. We're here every Tuesday, 1:00 p.m. Eastern Time, 10:00 a.m. Pacific Time to serve you. If you don't catch us live, you can catch the replays on Roku TV, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, And we are in the works to bring these episodes to our YouTube channel, Dr. Helen Holton. Keep looking out for it. And we look forward to seeing you each and every week.